Maayong buntag kaninyo tanan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gil Henyo. I'm your MC for today's General Membership Meeting of the Management Association of the Philippines here in Cebu City. On a personal note, I have a little bit of connection with Cebu City because decades ago, okay, wag nang exact year or years, I used to spend 3 days every week here in Cebu. And so I've become familiar with, now of course, a very different Cebu and a very different Cebu Business Park. Let's just say that was a while ago. And I do acknowledge that Cebu has gone a long way all throughout these years. On behalf of the MAP Board of Governors, I would like to call this MAP General Membership Meeting to order. First of all, let me say, and I hope you did, no? We enjoyed the special entertainment number of the Destined Blind Troubadours. A round of applause, please, for them. Oh. I didn't realize they already exited, but in the 3 years while they were on YouTube, the Troubadours generated about 1 million followers. Can you imagine that? 1 million followers and 19 million views. The Troubadours are expected to play at the inauguration of the Cebu Governor-elect, Pambari 4. They're also writing a new song. So abangan natin, a new song in celebration of the new Cebu. So many thanks to Wilson Lang, who's now just arrived, and I think Melanie is on her way. So thanks to Wilson and Melanie for providing these blind singers in the Destined Blind Troubadours to entertain us this morning. Another round of applause, please, for the Troubadours and for Melanie and Wilson. Thank you. We'll start the membership meeting with an invocation. May I ask the Treasurer of MAP and the Chair and Country Managing Partner of SGV and Company, please welcome Mr. Wilson Tan. Please rise for the invocation, and please remain standing after the invocation for the Philippine National Anthem.
Shall we pray? Father in heaven, thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to gather here in Cebu City for our MAP General Membership Meeting, where we will discuss economic briefing and also having time for networking fellowship later on. Thank you, Lord, for our guest speakers this morning. May you grant them wisdom and strength as they present to us the latest insofar as our economy is concerned. We also pray for our government, Lord. You said in your word that the powers that be are ordained by you. We pray for both for the national and local officials that they will do their best to take this country forward. Open our hearts, Lord, that we may reach out to those in need. Rekindle with us the desire to turn helplessness into purposeful action and our good intention into genuine acts of kindness and compassion. Give us always your divine wisdom. Help us to walk in integrity, uphold truth, and deliver excellence in all that we offer, so that the vision of shared prosperity may not only inspire us, but become a live reality. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, kaya sa sinamanan, alam ng puso, sa higit mo'y buhay. Upang hinilang, kuyagan ang magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo bagaw, ay hinatang tulang, awit sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagkilitin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay magdidinig, luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, mo'y langit sa piling mo, ang hindi kaya na pagkay maghahin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
seated. Before we start our program proper, may I acknowledge our partner for today's general membership meeting in Cebu. Many thanks to the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, headed by its president, who is also, by the way, an MAP member, Mr. J. Uvalios. Thanks also to the following for having one table each for today's MAP General Membership meeting here in Cebu. AC Health or Ayala Healthcare Holdings, Gallagher Insurance Brokers and Managers, formerly Phil Pacific Insurance Brokers, Isla Lipana and Company, PwC Philippines, and SGV and Company. Thank you. For the welcome remarks from the Management Association of the Philippines, may I call on the President of MAP and the Chair of Maya Bank, Mr. Al Pandilla.
Thank you, Hill. Hindi pa hapon, no? So, sa akin kasi maayong hapon kaninang tanan. So, good afternoon. I'll be ahead of the time. Good afternoon to all. And good morning to all, and thank you for being here. Hill, thank you again. Like Hill, I have a bit of a link to Cebu. The cousins of my wife are actually based here, and they're actually here. Arlo Sarmiento and Marco Sarmiento Vivan. So they're here. Thanks for the support for being here. And we've spent a lot of time, family time in Cebu, and really Cebu has developed in a big way the last few years. To our Honorable Governor-elect, I think she's supposed to come if she can, Pam Baricuatro, and Honorable Mayor-elect Nestor Arquibal. Congratulations. Our guest speakers, Dr. Shell Habito and Dan Roses. Our guests from the government, the academe and the media, officers and members of the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, fellow members of the Management Association of the Philippines, dear friends, again, good morning to everyone. On behalf of the Board of Governors of MAP and the 1,200 members that consist the MAP, I would like to welcome all of you to this MAP General Membership Meeting and Economic Briefing here in Cebu, which will be immediately followed by, as Hill said, an MAP Networking Fellowship. First of all, I would like to thank an MAP member and President of the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, President Jay. Had a good dinner last night. Of course, lechon was there. Thank you very much. And again, you're welcome to visit us in Manila and give me strokes when we play golf. And of course, MAP Membership Committee Co-Vice Chair Melanie Nang for helping us to put this event together. Maraming salamat. Thank you also to the officers and staff of the Cebu Chamber, led by Executive Director Joy Sigesmar, for their help. Can we please give them a round of applause? President Jay, Melanie, Joy, and the Cebu Chamber of Commerce Industry. Maraming salamat. But if I may also just take this opportunity also, that I haven't done a lot of from the start of the year, but I'd like also to thank the MAP team that always makes sure that all the events are seamless. Of course, headed by our Executive Director, Arnold Salvador, back there, with his Executive Assistant, Amorisel Limhoco, and Staff Assistant, Joanna Lumendino. Thank you very much for your hard work. Arnold, 6 months na ako. Secretary rin 6 months to go. Thank you also, as I think mentioned earlier, all our sponsors today, AC Health, Gallagher Insurance, Broker Philippines, Isla Lipana, PwC, and SGV for being our table sponsors for this GM. Without you, we cannot hold events like this. So at this point, maybe if you may give me a few minutes just to share with you the programs that we do at MAP, I'd like to update you with a few of these so that we can share these programs with the Cebu Chamber, and maybe we can coordinate and collaborate in some of these programs. And we can also understand, I think Jay will also come up here, what Cebu Chamber is doing, and maybe we can, again, collaborate on those programs. To start with, the MAP Board of Governors approved the participation of MAP in the Working with Cancer program. The main objectives are to really improve coverage and support for employees working with cancer, and launch awareness drives and screening programs for MAP members. We will provide more details, but in general, I think the objective is, I think, me personally, I feel cancer is here. It's here to stay, and I think people who have cancer tend to still have stigma in the corporate workspace, and I think we can correct that. Employees with cancer still can contribute, can still be valuable in our organizations, and I think we should support them in their journey. Also on May 28th, we released a statement of, we express our gratitude for DNR Secretary Maria Antonia Tony Yulu Loizaga for her invaluable service to the Republic of the Philippines as Secretary of Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR, and for unwavering commitment to integrating scientific research, interagency collaboration, and international partnerships to address our country's environmental challenges. We expressed our deep appreciation to Secretary Loizaga for the July 12, 2024 MOU between MAP and DNR with a core spirit of partnership with the private sector to promote DNR's top 10 environment priorities, which are flashed on your screen. We also thank Secretary Loizaga for engaging MAP through the March 21, 2025 MOU in the Forests for Life 10 Million Trees by 2028 program, which aims to rehabilitate degraded forests through multi-stakeholder collaboration. We wish Secretary Loizaga success in all her future undertakings, and we urge the DNR to actively pursue Secretary Loizaga's vision of science-based governance, environmental protection, and international collaboration. In a statement we released on May 27, MAP lauded the signing by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. of RA 12199, or the Early Childhood Care and Development, or ECCD law. We hope that the ECCD law will enable future budgets to be allocated to initiatives and resources that can be made available to nutrition-sensitive programs that will holistically address key underlying determinants of proper nutrition. These include food security, access to nutritious food at cheaper prices, access to health and social services, as well as nutrition-specific interventions that deal with micronutrient deficiency and other immediate causes of maternal and child malnutrition. The MAP will welcome the opportunity to participate in the crafting of the implementing rules and regulations, or IRR, of the ECCD law. In line with our mission to create a positive impact in nation building, MAP launched in 2023 its campaign against malnutrition and child stunting, or what we call CAMAX, in order to contribute to the improvement of the overall nutritional status of Filipino children and lactating mothers. We stressed in our April 22 MAP statement, entitled MAP urges completion of critical skyway segment, that vital transport infrastructure projects geared towards national development will be open opportunities for more investments, which will help spur economic growth. One significant project currently under construction is the link connecting the NLEX-SLEX Connector Road project and the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3. This essential infrastructure will enhance connectivity between the northern and southern provinces, significantly reducing travel time for people, goods, and services, thereby promoting economic growth. We strongly urge the government and the parties involved to fast-track the completion of this project and other vital infrastructure developments for nation building. And maybe you've read in the press, EDSA will go to a major rehabilitation program. They say 2 years. I don't know, Secretary, maybe 3, 4. So for sure, that will be a bottleneck also in our economic activities. In our April 4 statement, we express our concern over recent global trade developments, particularly the 17% tariff imposed by the US. This is a reality that will spread across many countries and will clearly have a varied economic impact to each nation. We urgently requested the appropriate government agencies to consider and address the impact of this new global order on the Philippines' economic security. Former NEDA Secretary Shel Habito, who is also our speaker today, has warned that the Philippines will feel the economic shockwaves from the US President Trump's recent decision to improve tariffs on imports even if the country's 70% rate is second lowest in ASEAN. And maybe that will be the conversation later on during the Q&A. And things change every day with President Trump. I was just watching this morning the address of the Harvard president to the graduating class of 2025, and it's impressive, sticking to his values and really the school against the administration. I'm also happy to report that MAP immediate past President Rene Almeredas, who just flew in today together with Gil Henyo, has been appointed by President Marcos Jr. as a private sector representative to the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDA. Rene, please. Proud son of Cebu. And Rene, I flew in yesterday because I had a few things I wanted to do, so a bit of Cebu. Not touristy stuff, but business. And I'm hearing your name for public servant positions maybe in 2028, so we'll see. We'll hold more meetings here. As you know, LEDAC serves as a consultative and advisory body composed of members from the executive and legislative branches, as well as representatives from the private sector and local government units. It plays a crucial role in formulating socioeconomic development programs and policies that align with countries' economic goals. We in the MAP will therefore have a unique opportunity to push our priority legislative agenda. So, Rene, good luck. Good luck in that. The MAP governors also, who currently concurrently serve as trustees of the MAP Research and Development Foundation, has approved the MAP R&D Foundation, which is the CSR arm of the MAP, these following trusts. So you see the diagram in front of you. Really wanting to focus on the youth, investing on the youth, and three pillars that surround it: health, education, agribusiness, and food security. On behalf of health, the MAP Health Committee will continue advocating for government and private sector to pursue relevant and wellness programs, particularly for the youth. The objective is for the youth to become productive members of society with competitive skills and capacity that will ensure a progressive economy of the future. On education, the MAP Education Committee has proposed a long-term program for MAP to assist in industry-related foundational reforms in education beyond EDCOM 2. To help improve our country's global competitiveness, the MAP Agribusiness Committee will continue pushing for vital policy reforms that will ensure food security through agricultural productivity. The MAP committees on health, education, and agribusiness, whose chairs, vice chairs, and governors in charge are being flashed on the screen, will implement their chosen specific programs to the MAP R&D Foundation under the three trusts. CAMAX, as I mentioned earlier, is also a project, or the main project of the MAP R&D Foundation. CAMAX, again, is a campaign against malnutrition and child stunting, which aims to contribute to the improvement of the overall nutritional status of Filipino children and lactating mothers. Our CAMAX is actually starting to bear fruit. It is very encouraging that PBBM, which I mentioned earlier, signed recently the RA 12199, or the Early Childhood Care and Development Law, which prioritizes early education, proper nutrition, and caring support to Filipino children, especially those aged 0 to 5, for the holistic well-being and growth. To reinforce our CAMAX, we have created a CAMAX committee under the MAP R&D Foundation with the following chair and vice chairs. Overall Chair, Attorney Dick Dubaladad. co-vice chairs, Ms. Karen Batumbaka, Dr. Shell Habito, Yusek Alma Jimenez, and trustee in charge is yours truly. This year actually is our 75th year, MAP. And we would like to invite everybody, including our friends in the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to join us in the MAP 75th Anniversary Ball on July 23, which will feature Ms. Lani Misalucha, Mr. Martin Rivera, and the Manila Symphony Orchestra. But the membership doesn't want to stop there, so they'll be dancing and singing after. So I think that's the more fun part of the ball. We will be charging entry fees for attending members and guests in order to generate funds for the MAP R&D Foundation, as I mentioned, so we can fund our various CSR programs. Our Energy Committee, headed by Ms. Ruth Owen, is organizing a Philippine Energy CEO Forum in September. I think the date I'm hearing September 16, as of now. This will be a high-level engagement to be facilitated and hosted by MAP to arrive at a multi-sectoral 3-year roadmap toward energy security and affordability. So anybody, again, is welcome to join us. The search is still on for Management Person of the Year for 2025. Please take note of the updated guidelines on the screen. Kindly call the MEP Secretariat, again, Arnold and the team, if you need help in submitting your nomination. Deadline will be in August 1. Happy to report also that the MEP Board approved at its May 21 meeting the MOU between the Justice Reform Initiative, or JRI, and MAP to formalize the cooperation and working relationship between JRI and MAP in connection with the administrative and operational support that MAP continues to provide. MAP has been supporting JRI since its inception in 2013. JRI serves as a principal voice of business and civil society in pushing for reforms in the administration of justice and advancement of the rule of law. To help also ensure clean, honest, accurate, meaningful, and peaceful midterm elections, MAP has contributed 1 million pesos to the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, PPCRV. PPCRV, as you know, uses the funds in mobilizing an army of about 350,000 passionate volunteers all over the country to execute their vital roles in poll watching, parallel counting, voter assistance, and conducting a random manual audit. I think President Jay was saying, I think in Cebu, you didn't have enough volunteers to man the precincts, but I think the voters themselves were the ones, I guess, protecting the votes. We are also holding, having an MAP CEO, our annual MAP CEO conference on on September 9. So please register and avail of early bird rate of 8,000 for MAP members and 10,000 for guests until May 31 for the 23rd International CEO Conference on September 9. Any venue or Shangri-La Fort? You know, a lot of our committees we have 25 committees, they're all very busy. In fact, one of them is Hil Chua, who's the head of our comms committee. Hil, thank you. Our Sports, Fellowship, and Wellness Committee, chaired by Attorney Ebo Tan, has started working on a Masarap Alagaan ang Pinoy, or MAP, cookbook, which contains a collection of recipes from MAP members nationwide. These recipes can be a family staple, an age-old family recipe, or simply a recipe that they love to eat, which will be converted to a more affordable and healthier dish for the common Filipino. President Jay, lagyan natin lechon na lang dyan. You can contribute. As much as possible, also, we organize network fellowship cocktails in order to provide MEP members a venue for networking and fellowship and to engage them to be active members of MAP's various committee. As we mentioned earlier, there will be one at 2 to 3, so please stay and be part of that networking fellowship this afternoon. On June 17, our technology committee has partnered with KPMG, RG Manabat and Company for the June 17 MAP KPMG Technology Summit. This also being pushed by our governor in charge here, Gil Genio. The summit aims to equip MEP members and other C-level executives with critical insights into the threats and opportunities surrounding digital transformation, data analytics, cybersecurity, data privacy, technology innovation, AI, and all of these things. So thank you again to the Technology Committee chaired by Bong Paloma, Teddy Sumulong for spearheading this summit. The MAP International Relations Committee, another committee, chaired by Juni Del Mundo, will be holding a summit on the ASEAN 2026 priorities within this year. The committee is now gathering inputs from the following 6 committees on the identified ASEAN 2026 priorities pertaining to agribusiness, technology, energy, transportation and infrastructure, trade investments and tourism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. President Jay, again, if I may request, I think we talked about it last night, maybe we can ask the committee to have your thoughts on this list and please provide your inputs also. Maraming salamat. The search is also now on for the 15 participants for the 5th round of the SGV. Thank you, Governor Wilson. MAP Next Gen CEO Transformative Leadership Program 2025, which is scheduled to start in June. The Next Gen CEO Transformative Leadership Program is a 6-month, in-person, interactive mentoring and development initiative that aims to encourage high-performing youth and future CEOs to cultivate key capabilities and skills that will enable them to become transformative leaders in their respective organizations and sectors. For interested Cebu-based MAP members, I'm just reading this now, we must be below 50 years old. There's no discrimination here. Maybe longer runway, okay. Please submit your latest resume and photo to the MAP Secretariat no later than June 3. In light of PBBM's recent call for a reset in key leadership roles in its administration, we underscored in our May 12 statement the value of principled leadership and accountability in driving progress and delivering meaningful results. We stress that we understand the President's actions and intentions as this happens in business and private sector. We hope that the President will find the appropriate talents for those he decides to replace, people who can effectively execute his government's plans. We trust that capable, proactive, and committed individuals will be empowered and work together as a cohesive team to execute nation's plans to uplift the lives of all Filipinos and move us closer to the outcomes our people deserve. We've had several very interesting talks or speakers the last few months, like our Chief of Staff, General Romeo Bronner, came to the GMM. Last month, it was Gila's head coach, Tim Cohn, which was very, sharing a coaching leadership style that can be applied also in the corporate world. We have lined up the following GMMs, in order to engage the memberships even more in a more meaningful way. So again, we invite everybody to please come to Manila and attend this. The next one, which will be very interesting in June 11, is conducting leadership in a reconnected world, leadership and management principles from a conductor's podium. So he is a Singaporean-based conductor, Jason Lai. He's the principal conductor of a Yongsi To Conservatory, and he will share with us the leadership skills and abilities that are needed to run or to make sure that an orchestra performs properly, or a symphony or a harmony. So this is under the Inspired series for our talks. On July 16, the MAP GMM will have the Navigating the Bermuda Triangle of Healthcare Issues and Outcomes with PhilHealth President and CEO Edwin Mercado. He's still there, no? He's still, okay. A speaker, I don't know now who's resigning or not. So hopefully it's still him. under the big issue series, the panelists are Sean Argos of MaxiCare, Mr. Jack Madrid of IBPAP, and Dr. Beaver Tamesis of Asian Hospital. On August 29, we are going to Iloilo, and we'll feature Dr. Jess Estanislao to talk about the Dream Philippines, and former Senate President Franklin Dillon, and former Iloilo City Mayor Jerry Trenas will talk about the Iloilo Miracle. So again, welcome to join us there. On September 24, GMM, on the impacts of climate change in the Philippines with Dr. Wilfredo Roy-Gil Licunan, Distinguished Full Professor and University Fellow of De La Salle University, and Mr. Rene Esmaili, President of Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, will be our speakers. Another a big issue series. On October 8th, I don't know where they've been. Has he been reappointed? So Sani, close friend Sani Angara, will be there as the DepEd Secretary to discuss, or at least the theme of that talk will be improving the quality of education in the country. So hopefully we can have Sani also there. So again, I invite everybody to please choose any of those activities. If not all, please attend us in all those talks. And for the details of these activities, please continue to monitor your Viber and email inboxes, the MAP website, map.org.ph, and the MAP memo for our weekly electronic newsletter. Again, thank you for having us this year, and for sure we will see you again here in Cebu again next year. And again, good afternoon to all. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Al, for the welcome remarks from our partner organization. May I call on the President of the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is also our fellow MAP member, and the President of YZ Global Resources. Please welcome Mr. J. Uvalios.
Mayor-elect Nestor Archibald, Res Al, Doc Shell, Secretary Rene, Sir Wilson, Sir Hill, AVP Melanie, my fellow members of the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as the Management Association of the Philippines, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I think it's good afternoon already. Okay. I admire President Al presenting the programs of MAP, big issues, you know, actually serious issues, but you know, delivering it in a fun way. So I don't know if I can do that in our setting here. The vision of the chamber, Cebu Chamber, is to be the engine of Cebu's business growth towards global competitiveness. And that means for us, world-class enterprises, world-class business community, and world-class people. We remove the word world-class, then we will just simply forget global competitiveness. I would like to share with you, because in our board meeting, actually yesterday, during the President's time, I shared something with them when I came home from a visit or during meetings in Urumqi, China, in Xinjiang province. So I attended the East Asia Business Council meetings there. And while coming back, I was awed, and I wrote a speech, a talk for an event at the chamber, and also during the President's, and I shared also in our President's time. And I entitled my talk, "The Day After, a Wake-Up Call for Economic and Moral Leadership." I would like to use these two words, day after, as a metaphor, because, you know, the day after is where challenges meet courage and hope. So like for example, such as, after a typhoon, the day after a typhoon, or big events such as the pandemic, day after when we were, free na, no more lockdowns, no? Or the election of Pope Leo, or when we got back from a trip, or that particular trip for that matter. So I was in Urumqi, Xinjiang province. It's a faraway place in northern China. And their neighbors are the Tan countries, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, etc. To say that I am awed and inspired is an understatement. Their tourism, infrastructure, and systems are effective. Their leadership and the provincial bureaucracy made presentations, and wow, they are really set for the big league. And sadly, it makes our counterparts here look like amateurs. We had meeting with the top leadership, the party secretary for the region, the provincial and city officials of Urumqi City and Xinjiang province. They have demonstrated what it is to be world-class, and in fact translated it to what you can see: tourism, industry, infrastructure, logistics, mining, industry, and even their academia. We have a lot to learn, to catch up, to leapfrog from our usual, to have world-class enterprises, business community, and people. We gather today not just an aftermath of an election, but at the dawn of what should be a new national reckoning. And for our setting at the Chamber, our reckoning here locally. For months, our focus was pulled into the noise of midterm politics. But while we were distracted, something more dangerous took root: a corrosion of trust, manipulation of truth, and hijacking of the country's economic narrative by forces that do not have the national interest at heart. We have seen in the news organized kidnapping syndicates, criminals, others hiding in a veil of legitimacy, even in our own backyard, scammers at the IT park. And sources tell us that it's not only one outfit. There are actually no less than 10 outfits operating there. They have infiltrated our economy and undermined the dignity of our country. These damages are not political. It is deeply economic. Investor confidence has wavered, our image abroad has suffered, and the cost of destruction is steep. During the dinner, one of the dinners there, I was seated beside a Korean national. He's based in Beijing. He showed me a screen grab of the news and advisory of the Korean nationals, or there was at least one that was killed, and a few other robberies. And one of the places mentioned there is actually here in Mactan. So, it's really sad, right? So at this point, I'd like to say that Mayor-elect Nestor made a call during our general membership meeting. And we want to say yes to your call for active participation of the Chamber. We will be with you, sir. As we now face mounting economic headwinds, we are faced with geopolitical tensions and trade wars. Actually, the world is also in chaos. We also are seeing a sluggish performance in tourism and real estate. Structural shifts in the BPO industry that threaten our competitive edge, AI for that matter, and society questioning its moral bearings. We are at a crossroads, and we must ask, are we content to be the same old Cebu or even the Philippines? Are we ready to become a province or a nation with resolve? In the recent elections, we saw both the ugliest and the most inspiring sides of our democracy. Dirty tactics and disinformation campaigns were met with resilience and renewed civic consciousness, especially among the youth. That is why we were surprised with the results. here in Cebu. Social media, long criticized as a source of chaos, has become a platform for awakening. As leaders in business, we must now go beyond profit. We must stand as pillars of institutional integrity, clean competition, and inclusive growth. The chamber must be more than a voice for enterprise. We must be a moral force and demand accountability and champion nation building. Let us not waste the clarity of this day after that comes with this moment. Let us not go back to the old ways of doing things. This is the day after, and it's time to get to work. In doing so, we are guided by our strategic blueprint, the Lead a Must agenda. It is an acronym, but if I stop there, it is a call to action, which shapes our agenda, shapes how we as business community respond to global shifts with local resolve. As I said, it's an acronym. Letter L stands for Launch the Invest in Cebu, Prosper in Paradise brand message. We had a dilemma before, and we said, how can we promote Cebu? What do we tell the investors or those who want to do business here? And through a branding journey, we did focus group in discussions, and this is our brand message. I hope you agree with it. While Palawan and Boracay is paradise, but no, it is nothing in comparison. There's no comparison to the opportunities that abound here in Cebu. Metro Manila cannot claim the word paradise, while there may be opportunities there, but we have the best of both worlds. The letter C is the cosmopolitan skyline of Cebu. Letter E is our environmental protection efforts. We are very glad that our mayor-elect is an environmental protection sustainability advocate. The letter B is our beach, beautiful beaches, and the bukid. And the letter U, with the upward trend of the economic expansion of Cebu beating year on year the national average. Last year, 5.3, I think, for the country. The Cebu and the Central Visayas region grew by 7.6. So the letter E stands for engaging the whole community because national economic resilience requires inclusive collaboration from government to grassroots. Our constituency is not really our 800 plus strong membership, but really the whole business community of Cebu, as well as its workforce and its people. Letter A stands for active partnerships, connecting local industries with global value chains, and fostering innovation through public and private cooperation. We decided that we no longer treat our sponsors as sponsors in our events, but we treat them as partners. Any investment that you will have through the chamber for Cebu, you are really a partner for the development of Cebu. The letter D stands for developing a culture of innovation and creativity because the new economy rewards adaptability, not just scale. So we have our flagship program for the chamber is the Cebu Business Month, but actually it's Cebu Business Months from June, July, and August. I'd like to invite you to our launching tonight, the CBM launching. But one of the things that we're doing as a flagship program is to your lower right picture there is good design, good business. For example, a hotel, or we have lined up experts in terms of designing spaces or even planning, urban planning, because it just makes sense. If we design well, then it means good business. And aside from the fact that good design enhances human experience. We also gathered, for example, the e-gamers here in Cebu. We made an inventory and we were surprised that we even have winning teams from Consolacion who had a silver medal in an international competition in esports. So all of these things we're doing. Next slide. So through AMAST, which is another acronym, but it is the alliances that we have created to channel our efforts, because the chamber cannot do it alone. We have to expand our reach and we have to expand our stakeholder base. We have decided that we will start with a minimum of these 5 vital pillars for the economy of Cebu. Letter A is the Academe Industry Alliance. We have meetings already, and we want to leverage on the inventions of our students. In fact, I have mentioned this in some of my speeches. Fairchild Semiconductors is actually a product of an invention from the Arizona State University in the 1950s. And they're still here. And they're still doing what they do best, but started from the academia. Next is the MICE Alliance, leveraging Cebu's strategic edge in meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions. Again, the process for us is very simple. We gathered the stakeholders. We created an ad hoc committee. Then we did a strategic planning. We casted a new vision for the MICE industry here in Cebu. We created a structure. And now, for the first time, we are about to print the first ever marketing collateral specifically for the MICE industry in Cebu. Abangan, we will launch it. The letter U stands for Utilities Alliance. It includes power, water, and connectivity. For power, we discuss not only the cost-effective power, but also clean power, for example. So I was surprised that there is, in fact, dirty power, right? So how can we host high-tech industries if we don't have clean power that is stable and sustainable and it's cost-effective? We also had meetings for the Water Alliance. We know that there are so many players in the industry, but the problem is they're working in silos. So the chamber is providing for this platform so that we can have a formal structure that will bring these initiatives so that we also will have a steady supply and sustainable water. Letter S stands for Stewardship and Sustainability Alliance, as we promote responsible and future-ready business practices. One of the stakeholders that we have partnered spoke during our general membership meeting, River Recycle firm, or a company based in Finland. They're doing interventions, cleaning up, for a start, 3 rivers here in Cebu. And we have casted a new vision. Our vision is to have the city of Cebu as the first city in the Philippines to have 0 contribution to ocean plastic. And that also will clean up our rivers, and hopefully we can use the water in our rivers one day as a resource for stable water supply. Letter T stands for Trade and Logistics Alliance, the backbone of our export-driven economy. These are not just abstract ideals, they are the working agenda of the Cebu Chamber, and today's forum is a manifestation of our commitment to transform challenges into solutions. That is why we are so eager to partner with the Management Association of the Philippines. While you are looking at it from the macro point of view, we are here doing our share in our local setting. So whether you are from government, industry, academe, or the development sector, your voice matters to us. I commend again the Management Association of the Philippines for your continued and steadfast commitment of promoting management excellence for nation building. programs which support the enhancement of knowledge, skills, and values of management practitioners and educators nationwide. I actually admire, there's the big series and there's the, the big issue series and how you chunk it. We hope to piggyback on these talks on leadership and as well as the other initiatives that you have, that we have, because I'm also part of MAP. So, the values of management practitioners and educators nationwide, and most importantly, advocacy for reforms that help shape a brighter future for the Philippines. Congratulations, daghang salamat, thank you, and I always say and end my speech, Padayon Cebu!
That's a great acronym. LEAD, a must. I like that. Thank you again, Mr. Yuvalios. At this point, for the presentation of new MAP members for induction, I would like to call on the chair of the MAP Membership Committee, former Cabinet Secretary, former Secretary of Energy, former Secretary for, and now consultant of Ayala Corporation. Hindi matapos-tapos yung trabaho niya. Secretary Rene Almendras.
In the tradition of MAP, dapat walang intro. Thank you very much. Before I introduce the new members, I want to take advantage and following the lead of President Jay, we do not like fake news. I got several calls asking me whether it's true that I'm now a member of the cabinet of President Aquino. Even my own sister called me. I want to clarify, the position is not a cabinet position of President Marcos, okay? It is an advisory position. I will work with Congress, with the Speaker, with the Senate President. I've been working with them anyway, and I was nominated by MAP. I did not think I was going to be appointed. As a matter of fact, I put a bet that I will not be appointed, so I had to pay. But I think the reason for the rumors is that was the morning that the president called for the resignation of his whole cabinet. And I got called to Malacanang on that afternoon. And Malacanang was very quiet. So when I got there, I was told that a lot of people came out to greet me, a lot of people I worked with then. And I was very surprised because after a few minutes, I was told, "Sir, can you go up because the president said he's just going to finish something and he's going to come out to meet you." And the president was gracious enough to come out 30 minutes before our schedule, but the shock of my life was I was the only one taking my oath. Normally in Malacanang, it's a bunch of you taking oath. But that is fake news, okay? So the truth is I am not in the cabinet of President Marcos. He has graciously taken me on as an advisor. We had a good conversation in the few minutes we spent together. And I always ask myself, why do you want to become the president of the Philippines with all the problems we have? Before I call on the new members, I just want to add a few things just to make sure you know who you are joining. If you notice, the MAP comes up with many statements. Sometimes the statement is critical. The MAP, as some people in media would refer to us as one of the country's most influential, if not the most influential in the country. Maybe it's because we talk too much. Maybe it's because we issue statements. But rightfully, we are a very principled organization. When we do complain or we raise an issue, we don't stop there. We make recommendations, like good managers. When we complained about EDSA, we recommended. When we complained about health or CAMAX, we took action, we make a recommendation. So you are joining an organization that's not all talk. We talk and we do. We raise an issue, but we also provide solutions. President Al mentioned we were the only business organization, one of the first business organizations to raise the issue on the potential threat of the geopolitical and economic security issues when President Trump The reason why MAP did that was because some people were saying it is going to be good for the Philippines, that we should be celebrating. Well, we saw it otherwise. We said, yes, there will be opportunities, but there will be threats. And we made a recommendation that the President take into consideration that geopolitics and geoeconomics have now merged, and economic security is now the #1 challenge in the whole world. And I'm very happy to report, Sir Al, that although the President did not really form an Economic Security Council, the new Department of Development, Shell, the old NEDA, actually has a mandate included in it, and it was one of the discussions I had with the President, wherein Secretary Balisacan in the new Department of Planning will actually be taking on the challenge of economic security, and that the private sector will now be invited to be part of it, which is really what MAP recommended. So I think the President does listen to some suggestion from MAP, not just a criticism. To the new members, you are joining an organization whose pursuit is really about excellence in management. So you ask questions, why are you into malnutrition and child stunting? For the very simple reason that the future of the Philippines is dependent on the quality of the workforce. So if our workforce is not well educated or skills lacking or malnourished or stunted, then we have a problem. And MAP likes to call out a problem way ahead so that we can still do something about it before it comes to fruition. With that, I am very pleased to announce that this afternoon we will be inducting 16 new MAP members here in Cebu who will increase MAP's total membership from 1,248 to 1,264. We kind of want to keep it at 1,200. By the way, as members of MAP based in Cebu, President Al showed you some of the speakers that will be in our membership meeting. The Secretariat will provide you a link so that you can actually participate virtually to some of these meetings. So if you can't come to Manila, you can watch the meetings from your computer here in Cebu. The only time we don't broadcast it is if the speaker will not allow us. Usually when we get speakers from the London Speakers Bureau or from some of the Speakers Bureau in the US, they normally don't allow digital transmission, but when they allow, we always will make available to you, the members of MAP in Cebu, virtual access to those meetings. So may I now call on our distinguished new members in Cebu, and I'm really very proud to call on the first one. We're very honored and pleased that the Mayor-elect for Cebu City Government, Mayor Nestor Archibal Sr., will be joining us in MAP, and we will be inducting you. We'll ask you up, Mayor. We will also now call on Ms. Cheryl Stephanie Israel Cruz, Vice President of Gallagher Insurance Brokers and Managers Incorporated. In line of business, insurance sponsor is Mr. Dondi Joseph and Ms. Melanie Nang. By the way, Mayor Archibal was sponsored by Rax Kagurangan and Attorney Yuni Mata Perez, a very, very strong Cebuano ladies mayor. May we now call on Mr. Voltaire Jerome S. Cruz, Senior Vice President for Project Development and Execution of Aboitiz Power Generation, sponsored Mr. Don Paulino and Mr. Danel Aboitiz. Danel is co-chair of our Energy Committee. We call on Ms. Gwendolyn Lanceta de la Cruz, GM of Seda Ayala Hotel, Ayala Center Cebu Hotel, sponsored by Mr. J. Valios and myself. We call on Ms. Pamela V. Galope, Territory Manager for Visayas for the Insular Life Assurance Company, line of business insurance, sponsors Ms. Nina Aguas, Ms. Noemi Azura. We call on Mr. Shem Jose W. Garcia, Vice President for Corporate Communications of Vivant Corporation, line of business, holding company, investments in electricity, gas, water, cable, and telephone utilities, sponsored by Dr. Ben Tihanki and Mr. Baste Quiñones. we call on Ms. April Rose Humauas, Assistant Vice President for Account Management of Gallagher Insurance Brokers Managers Incorporated, line of business insurance, sponsor Mr. Dondi Joseph and Ms. Melanie Nang. And finally, we call on Ms. Eileen Bailoses Lau, Team Head of Panay for BDO, line of business banking, sponsor the President of BDO, Mr. Nestor Tan, and myself. We call on Mr. Florendo Cornelio Nograles, President of 888 Tech Exchange Ventures Incorporated, line of business cybersecurity solutions, monitoring systems, sponsored by Mr. John Vinta and Mr. J. Uvalios. I want to make sure I did not miss anyone. Ms. Wenceslao, Jacqueline Perez Wenceslao, Senior Vice President for Phil Pacific Insurance Brokers, line of business insurance, sponsors Mr. Gordon Allen Joseph and Ms. Melanie Nang. I called everyone. Okay, I knew I was missing one because I sponsored her. Ms. Michelle Therese Bardino Pandan, Vice President and Division Head of the Visayas for Institutional Banking of the Bank of the Philippine Islands, line of business banking. The sponsors are the President of BPI, Mr. Jose Teodoro Limcauco, and Ms. Joanne B. Iyala. That's it? Meron pa, one more, sorry. Those we checks. Ms. Candice Dayan Balo Parenia, Chief Administrative Officer of ARTA, Regional Office, Eastern Visayas, line of business, government service, sponsored by the ARTA Secretary, Secretary Ernie Perez, who we've worked a lot with, and myself. Mr. Roberto Jesus Bobby Suson, CEO of NetStix, line of business, identity, cloud, fintech, authentication, and digital infrastructure, sponsors Mr. Vince Abejo and Ms. Melanie Nang. We call on Mr. Arvin Jason Dipico Tan, Vice President and Retail Branch Head for HSBC Philippines. Sponsor Ms. Cory Porissima of HSBC and myself. We're now calling Mr. Leal Richie T, President and CEO of Vis Motor Corporation, distribution of motorcycles. Sponsors Ms. Joy So and Ms. Melanie Nang. And finally, Ms. Carla Lau Wamilda, Founding Partner and Executive Vice President of Gallagher Insurance Brokers and Managers Incorporated, line of business, insurance, Mr. Dondi Joseph and Ms. Melanie Nang. That's it. Sorry, we have a lot of new members. May I now call on the President of MAP to administer the oath of office. To provide solemnity to the occasion, may I ask all of us to please rise.
Thank you, Sec Rene. Nauna yung oath-taking namin, Mayor. Sa'yo. Nauna to. So we have the privilege of oath-taking for you first. So again, please raise your hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do hereby solemnly pledge that I will perform well and faithfully to the best of my ability my duties as a regular member in order to contribute to the achievement of the objectives of the Management Association of the Philippines. So help me God. Congratulations and welcome to MAP.
Thank you, sir.
It is our tradition in the MAP for all the members of MAP to please welcome the new members as they come down from the stage. I will also be moderating the next session while they're taking the pictures. So I'm going to tease you a bit. The presentations of our two renowned economists are going to be very, very interesting. So you better stay because you're going to learn a lot.
It's certainly a great tradition for the MAP members and our guests to greet the newly inducted members of MAP. We'd also like to welcome Governor-elect Baricuatro to our membership meeting.
Okay, sorry. As chairman of the membership committee of the Management Association of the Philippines, it is an honor and a privilege to request the governor-elect of the province of Cebu, the Honorable Pam Baricuatro, to please come up on stage so we can induct you, ma'am. May I now call again the president of MAP to please administer the oath.
Oh my God, karon you are Ginoo, grabe, agad ani. So what will I do?
Governor, I said to the mayor that we're doing his oath taking before his mayor. Same with you. We're doing this oath taking before your governor oath taking.
Yeah,
So,
like, no?
so please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Pamela Baricuatro,
Do hereby solemnly pledge
do hereby solemnly pledge
that I will perform well and faithfully
that I will perform well and faithfully,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability,
my duties as a regular member
my duties as a regular member,
in order to contribute
in order to contribute
to the achievement of the objectives
to the achievement of the objectives
of the Management Association of the Philippines.
of the Management Association of the Philippines.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations and welcome to MAP.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Salamat.
If you can all settle down and enjoy, we have a song. We have a song composed by the Destined Blind Troubadours. Up. They're all taking pictures. Yeah. Well, maybe some of you are greeting Governor-elect and greeting each other. Please listen to the new song composed by the Destined Blind Troubadours.
ugang bayan.
Magkahiusap ang itang kamu ang sugbong.
Thank you very much for that wonderful new song, Kamuang Sugbo by the Destined Blind Troubadours. Before we get into the presentation, there's just a photo op that we'd like to have with the MAP, the mayor, the governor, and MAP board members, and Cebu Chamber. Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. In line with the MAP policy and in the interest of time, we will dispense with a lengthy introduction of our speakers. Their profiles will be flashed instead on the screens. I also would like to remind the speakers that you have been given up to 25 minutes each for your respective presentations. This will be a hard-hitting set of presentations from our two speakers. So please don't hold back, don't worry. If you ask questions, you will not be quoted by the press who are present here in our forum today. So everyone, for our first speaker, please welcome the former Secretary of Socio-Economic Planning and former Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, and now the Chair of Brain Trust Incorporated. Please welcome Dr. Shelito or Shell Habito.
Thank you very much. Governor-elect Pam Baricuatro, we're so pleased to have you. Mayor-elect Nestor Archival, the business leaders of Cebu, and the MAP top brass and fellow members, ladies and gentlemen, maayong hapon kaninyong tanan. I'm pleased and honored to be back with you again for this general membership meeting and economic briefing Uh, this time, I would like to share with you my perspectives on what I call hopes amid headwinds. And of course, you can see the forces besetting the world economy now, of course, affecting our own economy. Geopolitical shifts, trade uncertainties, and internally, food security risks. A quick overview of what I have within the next 25 minutes. Where's the economy now? Second, how do we compare to our neighbors? Third, what is US President Trump doing? And then I'll focus on agriculture and 7 deadly sins, I believe, that we and our government has committed and how to undo them. And finally, what lies ahead. Without further ado, let me go to where is our economy now? And I have been known for my trademark PTIC test. PTK, Presyo, Trabajo, Kita. And the reason for that is that when I was head of NEDA back in the 1990s, humihikab lang audience ko if I talk about fiscal deficits and balance of payments and anything else. But presyo, trabajo, kita, everybody can relate. So what's the news? Presyo, inflation is on a slowing trend, meaning prices are stabilizing. It was down to 1.4 as of March, and the average last year was 3.2. But there's persistent risks that continue to threaten price increases, especially in food, our most basic commodity. On the trabajo, or the T part of the pitik, the unemployment rate is at record lows, and this is the lowest I've seen in my professional life. 3.8 in February last February, but it even hit 3.1 in June and December last year. That's the lowest we've ever seen for the Philippines. The bad news, and I'll show you quickly, is we have a lot of educated jobless. The K part, or kita, or income, is measured by gross domestic product, or GDP. And the growth, as you know, had been below expectations at 5.4% as of the first quarter, but it still is among the fastest in our part of the world. So there is a good news part to that. Now, there are more downside risks precisely because of the things I talked about earlier, and I will elaborate on in a while. Now, let me go to some more details, and I don't know where I should face this to make this work well. Yeah, oops, I think I need to backspace. Where is the laptop? Para alam ko kung sa ituturo. Okay, now it's good. Headline, of course, Philippine inflation has eased to 1.4% in April. That's the latest, lower than most people expected. And if you look at the roller coaster we've been on that, it went as high as 8.7% in a particular month in 2022. It averaged 6% in 2023. It went down, as I already mentioned, 3.2 as of last year. Right now, it's averaging, since the start of the year, at 2.1. So that's a steady decline. And that means prices seem to be stabilizing. That's good news, of course. Now, trabajo. This is the table of the numbers. I just call your attention to the top line, which shows that unemployment rate had come down from 7.8%, that was the height of the pandemic, down to 3.9% as of March. And like I said, it reached 3.1% in 2 of the months last year. The other thing I'd like to call your attention to is the bottom line of underemployment. That means people have jobs, but their jobs are not enough for them to make the ends meet. And they express this in the survey. It doesn't only mean people who are working less than 8 hours a day. Somebody who is working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week at least, but still says in the survey that I'm not working enough, I'm still not earning enough to keep my family afloat, they are the ones considered underemployed. So that's more or less erratic, as I say, because it had been down to 11%, 10.9, but again, the latest has it at 13.4%. So more than 1 out of the 10 who are working are saying they are not working enough. Can whoever's on the laptop assist me? Okay. Now, the problem really is that college graduates are now the biggest part of the jobless in the Philippines. Before the pandemic, that's January 2020, it was junior high school graduates and also undergraduates in junior high school who were the largest segment of our jobless. Right now, you will be alarmed to find out is college graduates and those who are in college as undergrads are the biggest segment, and that means up to 35% of our unemployed people, workers, are graduates of college, and 44% have been in college, either as graduated already or still undergrads. So that tells you something about the kind of jobs our economy is generating if it's the college graduates who are having most difficulty finding work. Now, the kita part, GDP, again, the headline was it has been slower than expected. Philippine GDP in the first quarter grew by 5.4%. So it's only a bad news because it was lower than what people expect. And by the way, the government is targeting 6 to 8% according to the Philippine Development Plan. So it falls short of what government would like to see. But here are some more detailed numbers on that, just to show you how it breaks down according to sectors. Again, the GDP is right there in the yellow band in the middle, but you will notice that agriculture has reversed a three-quarter decline, so it's 2.2%, slightly above our population growth rate, which is good. Industry has slowed to just half the speed when it peaked in 2021. And I like industry to be the fastest because it's a sector that generates the best quality jobs in our economy. That's where labor productivity is highest. Services is next, but services is consistently the driver of our economy. It's fastest growing, 6.3% as of the latest. And as I said, it's our main growth driver, but the growth is also tapering. Agriculture, just to take a closer look, was very bad news last year. There were so many reds, meaning negatives. Now there are only 6 reds against 14 blues or blacks. And the losers have been export products like abaca, mango, and also traditional products like corn and livestock. We managed a 1.1% increase in rice or palay after, again, successive declines whole year last year. So this is the general picture. It's an improving picture, but still a long way to go. On manufacturing, which, as I said, my favorite sector in effect, because this is where the best quality, most productive jobs are. And Cebu, of course, is very well known to be a manufacturing center. Well, good news, there's 15 gainers and only 7 losers. And the best growers have been leather products, tobacco products, beverages, down the line, as I have on the right. But the overall growth is 4.1%. And here, it is relatively good, but we had been doing 8.8% in 2021, soon after the pandemic. And mind you, between 2010 up to about 2016 or 17, manufacturing was growing faster than overall GDP growth. So the fact that it's slowing down is a bit of a concern. And part of it is because of the trade difficulties with the Trump tariffs, global value chains being affected. And I'll say more about that in a while. Now, on the services sector, the most prominent, again, in our economy, the ones that are growing best are the ones that were hard hit during the pandemic. That includes hotels, restaurants. That includes information and communication, or ICT. And the top grower, by the way, is human health and social work. And banks traditionally have always grown, no matter what. In fact, I like to tease our banker friends that heads you win, tails we lose. Because even when we have negative aggregate growth, the banks are growing like 7 to 8%. And so that's the lifeblood of our economy, after all. Now, if you look at the spending side of the GDP, what is the demand that stimulates the production on our production sector? Well, I'll have to say it's really a government-driven GDP growth in the past year, including in the first quarter. Look at how government consumption spending was double-digit, 18.7% growth, and in the construction, broken down into government construction spending, corporation spending and household spending, mostly for houses, we can see that government was 8.2%, and that's the biggest portion of the construction spending. Households grew 13.9%, if you look at the last column. It's fast growth, but it also has the smallest share. So its contribution is still not as big as the contribution of an 8.2% increase in infrastructure spending. So in short, the reason our economy is growing the way it is mainly because government is really pump priming the economy. The inherent strength from investment spending, consumer spending is right about where it's normal, about 5% or so. But again, the other part of it is the international trade, how people buy our own goods and services. So if you look at some of the things I put in here, there's been deliberate boost from government spending, and there's also agricultural investment spending negative 4.9. And as I said, imports have been outstripping our exports, and that's why our trade deficit has grown again. So this is the picture from the demand side that's stimulating our growth. How are the regions growing? Well, it's already been mentioned earlier. This region, Central Visayas, is the fastest growing region in the country, with 7.3% growth according to the regional, our GRDP, Gross Regional Domestic Product Statistics from PSA. We don't have it for the first quarter because it's only reported annually, once a year. Of course, the arrows point to the other fast-growing regions, and that includes Region 3, Central Luzon, Region 8, which is Eastern Visayas, Region 11, of course, the Davao region, and Region 13, surprisingly and pleasantly surprised, that's the Caraga region, where Butuan, Surigao, Agusan are. Okay, now, next segment, how do we compare to our neighbors? Quickly, our inflation is no longer the highest. It was last year, but now this year, we are second highest to Vietnam. Vietnam is somewhat overheating with 3.7% inflation. Ours is 3.2, but still higher than the rest of our comparable neighbors. On unemployment, we are not the highest, we don't have the highest joblessness. Indonesia does. We are at 3.8%, again, higher still than our other neighbors in the comparable ASEAN countries. On GDP growth, we were highest in 2023 rather, with 5.5%. Vietnam was just 5 at the time. But in past year, Vietnam zoomed up to 7.1% growth. Ours was at 5.7. So we are now actually second, but again, faster than most of our neighbors. And that remains good news. Foreign direct investments, in 2023, we were doing better than both Malaysia and Thailand. But last year, Malaysia had gone ahead, as of the first quarter anyway. The numbers are slower in coming here because they have to collate it from many sources. And in terms of exports, this is where we see how pathetic our situation is. We only earn 70 billion in merchandise exports compared to 201, the next higher one, which is Indonesia, and so on, as you can see from the graph. Now, people say, well, but we have BPO. They don't have that, any of that or not much of that. We have remittances from our exports of people. But look, the numbers are about 38% for both. You add them to that 70%, we're still not going to catch up with just the merchandise exports alone of Indonesia. So we're really doing something very differently from our neighbors. And that's why I call ourselves an inward-looking economy. And if you look at the ratio of exports to GDP, you can see what I mean. Our exports amount to only 12.7% of our GDP, and even Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar have a higher export to GDP ratio than the Philippines. Mas outward-looking sila. We have been too inward-looking for too long. And I like the fact that Cebu is one of the more outward-looking regions and economies in the country because this is where a lot of our export industries are. Now, in summary, 2025 so far summarizes into the main good news and the bad news. The good news, we're still growing faster than most of our neighbors. And the question might be, how did we do it? Why are we growing faster than our neighbors? As I said, it's government spending. and the election especially, because I've looked at the GDP growth over election versus non-election years. Election years, it tends to grow about 1 percentage point faster because of the spending that accompanies elections. Now, the sectoral drivers have been tourism, which is good, and that means transport, food, and hotels. And again, as I said, banking and construction, because of the deliberate construction by the government and, of course, by private sector as well. The bad news is that private investments and exports are slowing down. And why? Well, the persistent hurdles to the ease of doing business, red tape, all sorts of government documentary procedures, the weak reliability and the higher cost of our electric power, our telecommunications, our logistics, elevated interest rates, which is now somewhat moderating because the US Fed has also been in a easing mode, and so of course our Banco Central will not be far behind. But in general, the global trade slowdown and the disruptions to the global value chains have affected our trade as much as the trade of the rest of the world. And mind you, again, our trade is a very little part of our economy compared to our neighbors. I don't know how to press this right. Oops, I reversed, I think. All right. What have been the drags and drivers in 2025? Well, external drivers, external factors are the murky U.S. economic prospects. Somebody just mentioned the unpredictability of U.S. President Trump. And so we also have geopolitical tensions, the West Philippine Sea, the Middle East, the Russia-Ukraine war, which we see no end in sight. On the internal side, we have election year spending, which is leading to the higher growth. But again, the rest is red. The politicized budget, campaign recess has paralyzed reforms for now, and I don't know whether the remaining session will lead to any substantial improvement in terms of the reform agenda. And there's also the fundamental and persistent human development challenges on health, nutrition, and education. And I think, we're in crisis in practically all of those right now. And again, I'll say a little bit more about that in a while. But I did say a lot more last year about that. Now, again, what is President Trump doing? He's raising tariffs on imports, waging trade wars with friends, the traditional friends even, of course, on China and Mexico and Canada as well. He's reducing income taxes because he thinks he should get more of the government revenues from import taxes or import tariffs. He's clamping down on immigration, whether illegal or legal immigrants. They are both facing risks. He's eased environmental and other regulations in the name of spurring more business. And he's streamlining the federal government by abolishing USAID and looking to abolish the Federal Department of Education and just leave it to the states. Now, what does he think will happen? And he acknowledges there's difficulties right now, but he calls them transition pains, leading to making America great again. So what he believes will happen is it will force manufacturing to go back to the United States, because most of them went to China, bring back the jobs in the process, eliminate the trade deficit by putting up these very high tariffs, and then in the course of that, strengthen the U.S. economy. Well, that is the hope on their part. What we all believe will actually happen is that it will lead to, yes, manufacturing growth, but because in this age of automation and AI and the high cost of labor, it will be more of jobless manufacturing growth. Yes, they may bring back manufacturing, but it will be robotics rather than people who are manning those factories. There will be labor shortages, especially at the lower end, the plumbers, the construction workers, the people who do the dirty jobs, which have traditionally been taken up by immigrants who are now being shooed away from America. And so it's going to be leading to labor market pressures, meaning high wages, and it will increase costs in general in the U.S. economy. They will become more uncompetitive as we go through this process. There will be wider inequality because the policies have been seen to be pro-rich. And so, taxes are being cut, mainly on the rich. And then the thing that is actually affecting all of us is the prospect of what they call de-dollarization. When the rest of the world now finds it unattractive to rely on the dollar as their reserve currency. And as you know, there's this movement by countries called the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, who's the C again? China, and South Africa, and now they've recruited several other countries. They want to set up a different world financial system. If they are successful, of course, many people doubt that they would be, but who knows? If the dollar ceases to become the world reserve currency, the demand for the dollar naturally declines. And it already has been, it really has been seeing, no? And that's the reason why the peso is relatively strong right now, because the dollar is weakening. And that's, we're now seeing 55 plus. Just a few months ago, I lost by buying at 58, no? So, but we had to use the money to travel. How will we be affected? Well, the hope of many optimists on our end is that the U.S. purchases from China and higher tariffs, and the higher tariff they put on China will shift the purchases to the Philippines because we have a lower 17% tariff. Of course, it has been put on hold for now. Philippine exports are minimal, so we won't be affected as much. But I say, tell that to the affected exporters of the travel goods, apparel, and other important export products we have, who have been taking advantage of the good access to the U.S. market and who might be affected if the 17% is done. I don't think they will agree that the effect is minimal. And it's also hoped that manufacturers in China, Vietnam, will begin opening factories in the Philippines, again, to take advantage of our lower tariff access to the U.S. That's a question mark. Why? Because of the traditional hindrances to foreign direct investments in the Philippines. Again, I've already mentioned some of them earlier. And then, there might be new Philippine business opportunities in the U.S. market. Well, again, that's more of a hopeful note. The fear, really, is that the global trade will shrink, and it already has. Global value chains are disrupted, the global economy contracts as a whole, and possibly even push into a recession. And that is what will affect us more heavily than the effect of the U.S. tariffs on our products going to the U.S. Now, the Philippines' exports to the U.S., of course, will still be affected, even with 17% tariffs. And that also means the rest of the world slowing down means remittances from our people who are working overseas depend on the health of the economies, of their host economies. So all of these are possibly going to be declining. And here's the threat that not very many people are thinking about. As the Chinese are unable to sell their goods as easily now in the U.S., they have been dumping a lot of these products at less than cost, actual cost, to the countries around them, Southeast Asia. And so we will have to take care that we will be getting an even bigger deluge. And not just by outright trading through ships. It's the Temu, Shein, Lazada, and Shopee platforms that are actually getting them into us. And so this is the kind of threat that Thailand has already felt for the last 2 years. There was a headline news in Thailand recently that 100 factories a month are closing in Thailand for the last 2 years already because of the flooding of cheap Chinese goods. And this is going to escalate the less that China is able to sell to the United States. That is what we ought to be fearing more. So a lot of people are beginning to think, well, the U.S. might be playing into the hands of Russia and China. In fact, you already see how President Trump apparently was sort of misled into thinking he could get peace in Russia and Ukraine. But the war draws on and the damage to global trade persists. China's invasion of Taiwan is now said to be a matter of when and not if. And of course, Trump has these expansionist dreams of getting into Panama, Greenland, and of course, even Canada. Meanwhile, China is getting more assertive in the West Philippine Sea. But we have our own homegrown fears, regardless of what we call Trump's tantrums, worsening politics, but of course the results of the last elections were really a hopeful note for many of us, including, by the way, the election of governor. So anyway, the paralysis in agriculture and fisheries and in education, health, and nutrition is also threatening our future. I'll say more about that in a while, but I'll have to speed through that. The growing stress on public financial management and expenditures. Our public debt has reached 17 trillion. And this has really grown so dramatically in the last several years alone. So I'm asking here, could we be our own worst enemy, actually? Not all of these outside forces that are impinging on us. So let me go to my favorite sector because I was trained, by the way, as an agricultural economist in my undergraduate days in UP Los Baños. And I've always said we have 7 deadly sins in the governance of agriculture. And I'll go through this quickly. The first one is that, first of all, let me talk about why I call agriculture our economy's backbone. If you look at services, half of our GDP coming from services is just coming from 2 regions, Metro Manila, Calabarzon. Industry, you just add Central Luzon. The 3 already make up half of our GDP from industry. But look at agriculture, it's a more even pie. 6 regions account for the first half of our GDP coming from agriculture. That's why I describe it as connecting all of our regions. It's like a backbone that's connecting the different parts of the body. That is one important reason why I call it the backbone. Another is the resilience of the sector. During the height of the pandemic, when there was double-digit drop in industry and almost double-digit in services, agriculture was just negative 0.2%. And you know what? If not for African swine fever, it would have been 2.4 positive at that year. So through adversity, agriculture actually has that resilience. So it may be a weak sector as of now because of mismanagement, but it is resilient. Well, third, I'd like to say that agriculture is the backbone and the foundation of the rest of the economy. And if I can get this next slide to show up. It provides the raw materials for about 2/3 of our manufacturing sector. And again, more than half of manufacturing is food manufacturing, by the way. But there's also the non-food agricultural products that go into manufacturing. Now, in turn, this is about 2/3 of total industry sector output, manufacturing itself. In services, agriculture and agri-based products figure prominently in the key services industries: wholesale and retail trade, transport and storage, food and accommodation services, and tourism, including now farm tourism as well, because the farms are becoming tourist attractions themselves. But the deadly sins start with number 1, continuing top-down management by the Department of Agriculture. And I say, let's just copy Vietnam and Indonesia, who have been empowering their provinces to take charge. Overall guidance lang sa top, no? And we have already in place a province-led agri and fisheries extension system, or PAFES, introduced in the last administration. And DA's work must be to simply do the steering, but let the local governments do the real hard work of rowing. And here, I'm glad that our governor-elect is here to take to heart that indeed it's the provinces who must take the lead. And so we must really face the PAFES system with the most capable provinces. And among these are Albay, the Davao provinces, and a number of others, which I have to say, some of us in the UP Los Baños community have actually been helping directly to make this happen and make it work. Now, that includes downloading a lot of the budget of DA to the provinces so that they can choose what to do with it in their respective municipalities and cities. And that way, DA can get a much higher absorptive capacity for their budget and therefore be able to justify more budget for agriculture. But don't keep it to yourself. Download it in good, airtight memorandums of agreement with the provinces so they have more to work with. Now, second deadly sin, their budget and their structure is organized by commodity, when it should be function-based, especially because they're supposed to be a steering organization. Their functions are standard setting, regulation, which hopefully is science-based and not just for protection, R&D, including extension, international negotiations, monitoring, evaluation, and learning from that monitoring and evaluation. It's now called MEL, not just M&E, because the learning part is what is often missing. Yes, nag-monitor, may data. Nakaupo lang to sa shelf yung data. Hindi ginagamit to improve things as they move forward. And most critically, helping build the capability of the local governments, do their work for them. Third sin, the failure to address the farm fragmentation. And we already know, right now it's 0.83 hectares per farm average. It used to be 3 hectares just about 15 years ago. What we need to do is to cluster these fragmented farms together, reestablish support for agri-industry cooperatives in the DA, provide longer and more secure leases for aquaculture and, in fact, farming investors. Hopefully, we can give an exception to agribusiness investors on the land ownership ceilings. Why? Because that's what's keeping them from investing in agro-processing. Lack of assurance of steady raw material supply. Of course, the easiest way to convince them is if they had control over a larger area. Ideally, we want these cooperatives to be the ones, but that will take time. So the lower hanging fruit, and this is controversial, of course, to the leftists especially, is to lift those land ownership ceilings for agribusiness investors. And finally, foster wider contract growing schemes. The Thais are doing it for almost every commodity. In the Philippines, where we invented contract growing, by the way, we're only doing it mainly for broilers and a couple of other products. But that's the way to get some scale also, even from small farmers. Another sin, the inordinate focus on just the farm production, when you should be looking at the entire value chain, from field to fork, as they say. And here again, I say, let's copy Malaysia and Vietnam. They empower their farmers, again, through cooperatives, and the farmers reap the gains from value adding through transport and logistics and processing interventions themselves. So DA also has a nice program that our firm was asked to evaluate a few years ago called the Agri-Industry Business Corridors Program. Unfortunately, I found out it has gone to the shelf simply because there was a change in leadership. And that is the problem in our country. With changes in leaders, programs are set aside so that they can have their own distinct mark, even good ones like the PAFES and this ABC. So these are the kinds of things that we need to stop. Fifth, undue obsession with full ripe self-sufficiency, which has made our rice doubly expensive than in our neighbors. Copy Malaysia. From the 1960s, Malaysia is only targeting 65%. They were able to raise it to 85% because by doing that, they had a better capability to produce it already, and they became more competitive. Note, the Department of Agriculture budget is 70% rice, and yet rice only contributes 17% of total gross value added in agriculture. How perverse, right? So we should allow the marginal rice lands to be taken out of rice because the farmers can probably get more by growing higher value crops in those rice. And then, of course, at the expense, perhaps, of rice production. But we will have farmers with better welfare and incomes. Excessive trade protection has stifled precisely that productivity improvement. We should rely not on trade controls on rice and agricultural commodities, but tariffs. So we know how much we're protecting a particular commodity by the tariff rates. No? And we have, again, to use sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, science-based, not as protection. Here's the result of protecting rice since 1995 by exempting it from WTO rules. The spread between domestic price and the border price or the trading price has gone wider and wider through the years until finally the rice tariffication law was passed. That is what changed the game for rice. In fact, it did not lead to the decline right after the tariffication law. It actually led to increases in production. And if I expand that graph a little further to the past, and then let me backtrack. In the 1980s, domestic price of rice was actually lower than the world price. And there were even spikes when the world price was way higher. And then it was only in 1990s when we started exempting agriculture, especially rice, that this kind of spread began to happen. Why? There's no incentive to compete. The help that the DA gave our farmers was, okay, we'll close the market. Wala na kayong kalaban. And that led to complacency. Not only among farmers, I'm not blaming them, the DA itself became complacent about helping them in a more meaningful way of increasing their productivity. And seventh sin is access to credit. In Thailand, I've read the literature, they always say small farmers have easy access to credit. And they have a land bank-like bank there called the BAAC, Bank of Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives. Why can't we just copy what they're doing right? How come our land bank is not able to do it? Well, there are things like land bank is expected to be like a commercial bank in terms of its CAMELS ratings because of the regulatory metrics imposed by the central bank by law. BAAC has its own regulatory metrics in the Thai government. The Nong Hyuk Bank, and Nong Hyuk means farmers' cooperatives. That's the big bank in Korea owned by farmer cooperatives. They have different metrics to go by, and their metrics go by their mission of financing small farmers. Financial technologies may also help. So as I wind down, let me just remind ourselves, and it's been talked about a while already, 1 in every 3 Filipino children, 5 years old and below, is severely malnourished and stunted. 90% of our brain development happens before age 5. For every child malnourished at age 5 and stunted at age 5, he or she is damaged for life. And that really is a threat to the future of our workforce, as already mentioned. Now, given that, it's no surprise that we're seeing things like 91% learning poverty in the Philippines. Our stunting was 45% in the 1980s, nearly 1 out of 2 young children. So this is the kind of education crisis we're all reading about lately, and I submit that it's not just because of lack of teachers or textbooks or schoolrooms, it's because of malnourished and hungry children. And this traces fundamentally to poverty and to high prices of food, and therefore to age-old failures in agriculture. So ultimately, solving our educational crisis also hinges on the Department of Agriculture and on our local governments, who by law have been tasked with really taking charge of agriculture anyway, just as much as the Department of Education. Now, given that we may no longer be competitive in the near future on science and technology, engineering and math, or STEM, perhaps we can make up for it for what we are always known for worldwide, our talent, artistic, creative talent. We are the most talented, most people think, di ba? So why don't we copy South Korea? It just cashed in on pop music performers, theaters, musicals, films, telenovelas, software, games, and animation is something we're already in, kaya may check na ako dyan. Furniture, crafts, jewelry, and toys design. We have Kenneth Cobunpue from here, Monique Luillier from here, making a name worldwide. We win a lot of international competitions in singing and whatever else. And then Filipino food and cuisine beginning to get Michelin star ratings overseas. Dati kasi pag nagpunta ka sa Filipino restaurant abroad, karinderia style lang yan, pang Filipino expats. Now we have Kasama in Chicago. Unfortunately, Purple Yam in New York closed down. But these are the kinds of restaurants that project Philippine cuisine to the rest of the world. We need to cash in on this if we are not able to compete in AI and the 4th Industrial Revolution. And guess what? I acknowledge that Cebu is really gearing up to be the epicenter of the creative industry in the Philippines. And so you have to really lead the way in this kind of endeavor. Ayun si Kenneth at saka si Monique. No? Well, quickly, anong outlook? IMF in January was saying developing economies, emerging market and developing economies will grow by 4.2%, and Asia emerging economies will grow by 5.1% this year. At that time, we were saying Philippines was going to do 6%. In April, after Trump came in with all his tantrums, some people say, IMF had to downgrade. IMF is now saying only 3.7 for emerging market economies in general, and in Asia, 4.5 na lang. Philippines, of course, we are now at 5.4 so far. What am I pointing out here? Mas maganda pa rin kaysa doon sa projection for our peers and for the rest of the world. So again, that's positive news for all of us. What's my own forecast? Well, inflation will probably be between 2 to 3%, unemployment within 3.5 to 4.5%, and GDP, I'm more modest at 5 to 5%. In fact, we have 5.4 within that range. But we need to really bolster more domestic demand, that's consumption, investment especially, and of course, government spending. But also tap new export opportunities, and of course, gear up to defend ourselves from the dumping that's about to come more from China. So hopefully, as I end, these are the takeaways you would take. The Philippine economy is performing better than most of our neighbors, but it still lags far behind, and poverty and inequality are still higher. The geopolitical and trade uncertainty provide downside risks, and then the silent crisis of early childhood malnutrition and stunting compounds our education crisis and threatens the country's very economic future. People call it a demographic sweet spot, that we're going to have a predominance of working age population. I wonder whether it will be instead a demographic time bomb if you don't address child malnutrition and stunting. So the crisis that I've been talking about trace to our failure in agriculture, and that's why I talked about the 7 sins and how we can get out of them. But our creative sector could be our savior, at least for the next couple of decades. So we have to make good at that. So on that note, I end my talk, and I'd like to have a shameless plug here. I've written all my thoughts on agriculture over the last 23 years in this book, a compilation of my articles. It's available in Lazada in case you're interested. Maraming salamat po.
Always wonderful to hear from Shell. May I now call on our second speaker, the economist of the SM Investments Corporation. Please welcome Mr. Robert Dan Roses.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure for us to be here. No, it's also my very distinct privilege to talk after my idol, former NEDA Secretary Shell Habito. No? He was the NEDA Sec when I was in college. Pero ano yun, sir? Kakagraduate mo pa lang sa college, no? So, so I'm not trying to. Yeah. So I'd like to take off from the excellent talk of Dr. Habito. No? Not long ago, economic briefings actually started with charts and curves. No? And I myself have been guilty of that as well. No? Smooth lines showing predicting stable growth. We have lines showing stable inflation and then stable trade as well. No? But the last few years, especially in the last few months, have actually torn those curves apart. No? So if we think back a bit, no, let's go to the larger sphere. A cargo ship blocks the Suez Canal and suddenly prices spike around the world. No? We have Russia invading Ukraine and then energy markets starting to convulse. And then we have China reopening as well. No? Everybody thought, including myself when I was with a bank, that global demand will roar back. It didn't, and we're still feeling, the stumble up until now. No? So here at home, we've had a rice crisis, we've had inflation swings, capital markets that react more to U.S. Fed whispers rather than domestic fundamentals. So something that Dr. Habito actually alluded to. No? We have to be able to decouple already from what's happening in the U.S. versus the domestic situation. No? So all this reminds us the world isn't behaving the way that the usual textbooks said it would. Inflation wasn't just too much money; it was oil shocks, food supply gaps. We have underbuilt housing and then labor mismatches as well. No? So trade isn't just about comparative advantage anymore. It's about national security. You have supply chain control and friendshoring. And the markets, they're not as efficient as what we were used to. No? Especially when trust, politics, and fear actually drive the low flow of capital. So the problem actually isn't the models themselves. This is not an attack on my profession, but what I'm espousing is we have to go around the mindset that we built in the past. We're still using Econ 101 reflexes to solve PhD level disruptions. So that's why what Dr. Habito was talking about earlier, it's actually more complex than what some advisors would say. It's not that simple, actually. So today, I invite you to go beyond the curve, to embrace a new kind of economic thinking, one that deals actually in complexity. So this trades rigidity for resilience, and one that sees policy not just as theory, but as a navigation tool in a world that no longer moves in straight lines. So let me show you what I mean. If we can go to the next slide there. Okay. So this is, sorry. So this is what a semiconductor supply chain really looks like now. So we've been hearing about, supply chain disruptions. Yan yung problema natin, no? Noong pandemic, yan yung problema nung nagkagulo sa Ukraine, no? This is what that supply chain really looks like, no? It's not a clean line, as you can see, no? It's a tangled global web. We once said, let markets optimize. We imagine simplicity, no? In fact, we embrace simplicity. But the reality is actually spaghetti, no? The pandemic proved that point. Efficiency isn't necessarily resilience, no? One glitch, this took place simultaneously, during when everybody was going away or veering away from the lockdowns. No? We saw a blocking in the Suez Canal. We saw a Taiwanese factory outage. No? The whole system jolts, no? As you can see from that interconnection. No? So the invisible hand actually doesn't really do well in untangling knots. No? That's why even Free Market America actually passed the CHIPS Act. CHIPS Act is short for Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors in the US. No? That's a law passed in 2022, which was aimed at boosting domestic semiconductor manufacturing, research, and supply chain resilience. So it didn't really start with Trump. Back in 2022, there were already proposals, no, to bring back some of the manufacturing efforts back into the US. No? And precise lang na Trump, and he claimed credit for it, rightly or wrongly. No? So, in short, that's a $52.7 billion push to bring chip making back home to the US. It's actually industrial policy, that's not ideology. No? So sometimes, only a visible hand can sort out the mess, especially in something as complex as this one. So let's talk about inflation. This is a breakdown of US inflation components. If we believe the basic version or the simplified version, inflation is simple. Too much money actually chasing too few goods. Just raise interest rates, problem solved. But look at the components. No? We saw energy spikes from a war in Ukraine. That's the fat part, orange part. Supply chain disruptions from zero COVID policies. Housing costs driven by decades of underbuilding. Labor costs reflecting a great resignation that the basic narrative never predicted. So each slice of this pie has its own story, its own solution. You can't actually fix a supply shock with demand-side tools alone. No? You can't actually solve a housing shortage with interest rates. So as one Fed official actually said, we're actually using a sledgehammer on a problem that actually needs a Swiss Army knife. It could be small, but it's effectively useful, no? Not just a one-size-fits-all solution. This is the Philippine version. Our real pain point has always been energy and food, which makes up over 40% of the consumer price index basket. When both spike, inflation bites hard. So we saw that back in 2022 when energy prices went up because of the Russia-Ukraine war outbreak, and that forced the BSP to actually raise interest rates, among other things. So lately, both have eased, which is why we expect inflation to stay near 2% over the next 2 years at least. Barring new supply shocks, of course. So in this, Trump is really unpredictable. So we don't really know if those supply shocks will come or not, no? But we have to be prepared for that. No? So the risk really isn't demand, it's disruption. So speaking of predictions, this is my favorite slide. Prediction versus reality. So left, this is what the simple framework predicted. We call it economism. There's a very good book on it. Economism is the belief that basic economic models, like in supply and demand or market efficiency, can explain and solve all real-world problems, even complex ones. It treats simplified theories as universal truths, often ignoring, context, politics, human behavior, and uncertainty. So on the right is what actually happened. In 2020, stimulus because of the pandemic. In the US at least, there was stimulus which might equal to hyperinflation. That was what fellow economists were warning about. No? The reality was actually deflation fears. Why? Because they saw that the following year, in 2021, the labor market will fix itself post-benefits, meaning the very large stimulus package given by the federal government to every American. The reality was that the Great Resignation actually took off. This is because most of the Americans didn't want to go back to work. I mean, why go back to work? Because we're cash heavy. The government gave us money. So we'd rather, resign than go back to work, or demand more work from home. In 2022, when inflation took off, markets priced in a Fed hike that will be very smooth. The reality was actually surprise bank failure. So, the smaller banks like SVB and all the other smaller banks in the US actually went near closure. So that happened. And then in 2023, China's reopening, because they reopened late. Remember that now? 2023, China's reopening actually will lift growth. At least that was the expectation as well. The reality was a structural slowdown, which dragged on. 2024, everybody got scared of AI because AI will kill millions of jobs instantly. The reality right now is that labor is still tight. AI adoption is messy. We haven't really adopted into it yet. It's just a tool akin to a search engine. So the pattern here, we're seeing the pattern. The simple models actually result in big misses lately. Humans aren't always rational, so we think markets aren't always efficient as well. And the future, what's funny about the future is that it loves irony. So that's why we have been failing on forecasts in the past 15 years already. So now here's where it really gets interesting. This heat map actually shows geopolitical risk to global supply chains. The red zones aren't random. They're exactly where the basic arguments told us to offshore. So you have cheap labor and light regulation. When you want to put up a factory, you look for those conditions. Semiconductors, 90% of advanced chips made in Taiwan. Rare earths, over 85% processed in China. Energy, those come from choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, which handle 20% of global oil. That's not efficiency, actually it's fragility. You were looking for efficiency, but you got fragility. Okay? So in economics, we call this the theory of comparative advantage, which never asked what happens when your supplier becomes your strategic rival, as is what's happening with China and US at the moment. It priced goods, but not necessarily the risk. It assumed geopolitics will not matter and didn't matter, which is what's happening at the moment. Now, in the era of Trump 2.0, we talk more about friendshoring, you have nearshoring, reshoring. These aren't trends, they're actually corrections. Okay? The model might be a bit broken. So reality is helping us recalibrate those models. So we have to be honest about the track record. Okay. So left is what the economism framework prescribed, right is what actually worked now. In 2008, during the Great Recession, the rallying call was actually, let's let markets self-correct. Let them decide. No? Massive bailouts and re-regulation was what worked. In 2020, let's avoid moral hazard. Let's avoid giving money to the industries that are very relevant to our survival. Guess what? Worked. Direct cash injections, you had business rescue, no depression, right? In 2021, price signals will fix supply chains. It was actually industrial policy and government coordination that worked. No? And then what's ongoing? No? You have carbon tax. We'll do the job. Let's tax all those polluting companies. What works actually is public investment. You have regulations and markets all together, moving in sync. So the pattern is undeniable. No? In every major crisis of the last 15 years, the basic playbook has always been wrong. Not partially wrong, no, fundamentally wrong about how modern economies actually function. So let me show you what moving beyond the basics, beyond economism looks like in practice. More so in the context of what is happening now, given Trump 2.0. So what is Trump's play, given all this that's happening now? Dr. Habito actually alluded to this earlier, which is also a theory going around. In the context of this, Trump's play might simply be weaken the dollar. In business circles, people are talking about a 25 to 30% drop in the value of the USD, which will quietly deliver what tariffs and bluster won't. Historically, similar down cycles we saw in 1985 to 1987. We saw it in 2000 to 2008. A devalued dollar or the dollarization actually cut the U.S. trade deficit by over 2% of GDP. Exporters win in the U.S. Importers retrench. Foreign central banks like the PBOC and CBI reaccumulate U.S. dollars and treasuries when their own currencies appreciate, just as they did during prior cycles. Meanwhile, we'll see actually gold, crypto, and high beta risk rally. Gold tripled in the 2000s dollar slide. Gold actually accumulated way past its historical value last year and still at that level. No? So we're seeing that as well. Crypto and tech ripped in 2020 to 2021. A weaker dollar also nudges foreign producers to localize, which mitigates FX exposure by moving inside the currency zone. So in the past, the basic argument where policy is performative, this is actually real strategy. Not to give credit to Trump, but sometimes we have to understand the man. We have to understand the behavior. If you read this book, well, if he really wrote it, in The Art of Negotiation, kung siya talaga nagsulat noon, then you must be a master of negotiation. He's doing something, but he's really trying to achieve another thing. So that's, not to be pro-Trump or anti-Trump, but we have to understand the real risks involved with him around. And that's for the next 4 to 6 years pa. So this is the scenario making rounds in serious policy circles at the moment. 25-30% weaker dollar over the next 1 to 2 years, not through crisis, but through coordinated policy. So, next slide. All right. So let's talk about what's going to happen to the Philippines in that scenario. So we can be in agreement that the world has shifted once more. With a scenario of 25 to 30% weaker dollar, we did this dashboard to help us map out how the Philippines fits into this new regime. So top left, we have remittances and exports. A weaker dollar cuts OFW remittance value. So $36 billion buys less at home. BPOs will face tighter margins, but exports to non-dollar markets will get a boost. It's not a strong peso equals bad. It's which currencies you earn and where you sell. Top right, we have debts and imports. Dollar debt gets heavier, but imports from Japan, China, and Europe will get cheaper. Oil stays dollar priced, but FX cushions will soften the blow. The basic argument says strong currency equals low inflation. The reality actually depends on your trade mix. Bottom left, you have investment flows. Stronger peso may deter dollar FDI, but it will also attract capital fleeing dollar risk. So the Philippines becomes a currency neutral anchor. BSP's job will now veer away from defense to navigation. And then bottom right, you have the strategic position. 40% of trade in Asia, you have 15% with the US, and then we have rising EU ties. French President Macron on behalf of the EU is actually doing a charm offensive at the moment. Now he's going around the globe. So the EU is trying to establish more ties. They're trying to overcome the US at the moment. The Philippines isn't caught in the middle. We're actually connected across. That's not fragility. That's actually optionality on our part. And it's not a forecast, it's a framework. The weaker dollar will probably reshape everything. Old binaries won't work, so we have to position accordingly. Nationally, not just financially. And this is just proof that, that 25% drop is rooted in history. It's not a black swan event. They're recurring features of global resets. In 1985 to 1995, we saw a 48% drop after the Plaza Accord. 2001, 2008, 40% drop amid twin deficits and the housing crisis in the US. 2017 to 2020, 14% drop during trade wars and COVID. And then the current scenario, 25% in a multipolar world because of Mr. Trump. So the insight here is actually a 25% drop isn't extreme, it's a precedent. And when it happens, it's going to reshape trade, remittances, debt burdens, and capital flows for us. It's happened before, this is not theoretical. So the dashboard scenario earlier, we saw it's historically grounded and strategically urgent. So in closing, where does that leave us? Okay. Markets still work. I'm inherently pro-market because of my training. Markets still work, often brilliantly. But in a world this volatile, simple models have become a dangerous comfort. Economics isn't physics. It's closer to weather forecasting, and the weather's getting wilder every day. Last night, President Al alluded to it earlier. There was a moratorium on the tariffs ordered by Trump. And then later in the day, before I came down, the Trump administration actually sued again to have it imposed. So there was a hold to the hold order because they will be taking it to the Supreme Court now. So such is the world that we are living in now. And if the past 4 months is any indicator, we're in with the same situation for the next 4 years, 4 to 6 years. So position accordingly. What's becoming clear is this. To understand markets, we need to understand people as well. Fear, confidence, inertia. This actually shape capital flows just as much as rates and ratios. Behavioral economics is no longer a side note. It's coming back into the fore. So it's central to decoding investor reactions. You have consumer shifts and policy dynamics. And now we have a new tool, AI. not to replace human judgment, but to deepen it. At least that's the wish. To sift noise from signal, which is very important. It helps us also to detect patterns in behavior and surface insights that conventional models usually miss. In 2025, the invisible hand doesn't just need GPS. It actually needs behavioral insights and machine learning to chart the terrain. It's not about choosing between markets or the state. It's about choosing smart strategy over outdated scripts. So the challenge ahead is actually complex. We have to position in the next 4 to 6 years. The tools we have now will have to be able to meet it. So good luck to us in the next 4 years, because again, like I said earlier, if it's any indication, it's going to be a wild ride. But hopefully, with the Philippines positioned very well in terms of trade and our currency, we'll be able to ride that storm again, and be able to attract more of investors rather than them going to someplace else. And with the help of Secretary Almendras, I think we will be able to achieve that. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosas, for a wonderful presentation, even though there's a lot of uncertainty. We will now proceed to the Q&A. By the way, just a reminder, right after our general membership meeting, we will have networking cocktails outside with juices, beers, red wine, white wine. May I also ask Dr. Habito to join the panel here on the stage? And there are microphones on the floor. So if anyone wants to ask a question, please wait to be acknowledged. I just want to ask you, please do not make a speech. Just say your name and your organization and go directly ask your question. You can approach any of the, I think there are 2 or 3 microphones on the floor. Go ahead, Rene.
Thank you very much, Hill. For the new members of MAP meetings are very engaging. As a matter of fact, sometimes they can become controversial. Not naman violent, okay? But the reason for that is we want MAP meetings to be substantial. We don't want to waste your time. You are managers managing time. So I understand we have 2 media organizations here with us. Our request to you is you can write about this event, but no attribution. What do we mean? You cannot say who asked the question. We don't want to get anyone into trouble. MAP is apolitical. We do not play the political game. So the reason why we request that is because we want you to not be afraid to ask questions or express opinions. Second call, we are in Cebu, and I'm sorry for our colleagues from Manila. I would like to give the floor to the Cebuanos here, okay? If you want to ask in Cebuano, don't worry, I'll translate. The reality is the world has become so complex. There's bad news, there's good news. MAP's theme is management excellence. Good managers understand. Why? Because it's easier to manage something that you understand. That's why we have forums like this. Please take advantage of this forum to learn more about the realities we have. Second, please do not walk out of this room depressed, okay? That is not the objective. Our objective is to equip you with understanding, perspective, so that you can do your job as managers better. And let's face it, there's good news and bad news. Last request, Dr. Habito has to attend a board meeting at 2 o'clock, so he's late. So I think his per diem is in danger. But he has agreed to stay a bit longer. So we're going to start with Dr. Habito Shell, then I'll go to you, Dan. Good news and bad news. Yesterday, we discussed the 100-year lease. Senate is on it, Congress will pass. Second good news, land ownership. Okay, unfortunately, the increase of land holdings from the 5% to, don't laugh, Shell, I know 24 is not a good number, Last year, we hosted the Israeli Agritech delegation, MAP. They came to meet with us. And I tell you, they have the technology. Their bananas produce 130% more fruits than ours. Okay, so imagine what their technology can do. Problem is, they need land in bigger scale because of the investment. That's why MAP has been pushing to increase the land ownership limit from the 5 hectares to a higher amount. But that being the case, the long-term lease is still going to happen. So 6 more legislative days, God willing, the Senate President is trying to push it. So I'm giving you good news, you're not depressed. So, can I have the first question, please, from the floor? Rather than me ask the questions, we'd like to give our Cebu members and guests any questions you may have for Dr. Habito. The PTIC test, agriculture, the governors walked out. What's in it for you? Dr. Habito talked about agriculture and letting local governments drive it. There is a system. If the province of Cebu decides to come up with an agricultural plan for the whole province, meaning being able to identify which crops to plant in which areas, this can be much, much better plain. You know, Cebu has never been known for agriculture because we have so much mactan rock. No, our land is mostly bato. But the reality is we still have land. If we can make use of that land better, that's going to be more effective for us. Questions, please, for Dr. Habito, if any? Please do not be afraid. Just stand up and go to the microphone. Any issues that you want to discuss? It looks like you're very happy with the presentation of Dr. Habito. Are you sad? Are you depressed? Okay, we have a question. The microphone, please. Can we fix the microphone here?
Hello, okay na. So, maayong hapon. So, I'm Deliza. I'm a member of the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry and a member of MAP, as well as the co-chair for the Next Gen Committee. So, my question is, as you were discussing, what and how will we get the interests of the next generation of workers to go into agriculture when so many of them take agriculture but they go into other industries? How do we get people to go back into agriculture? Because the next generation rather would go into something else and probably even be more of an influencer than a farmer.
Well, I do have some good news. My company, Brain Trust Inc., was actually commissioned by the Department of Agriculture, specifically the Agricultural Training Institute, to do a couple of studies for them over the last 2 to 3 years, which made us go around the country to all the different regions. And what we're finding out, quite to our pleasant surprise, is in recent years, there is again growing enrollment in agricultural courses in the state universities and colleges. So I was surprised to hear that. But one thing that I have been saying for some time now is the way to make agriculture attractive to young people is to stop talking about agriculture as farming and talk about it as agricultural entrepreneurship, and therefore turning it into what has traditionally been known as agribusiness. In other words, look beyond the farming, look beyond just production on the farm, but also the value adding, meaning the processing. And so the many impediments to that are being addressed right now. Secretary Almeras has mentioned some reforms, hopefully, on the limits to land ownership or to tenure, which has stopped big investors in processing. But it should also encourage even the smaller and younger investors into more of that agri-entrepreneurship or agripreneurship, as they're calling. And there are also groups I've met, young people who are into financial technologies to finance farmers, and using things like crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, and other new financial technologies to raise funds that can be accessed by farmers. So these to me are promising signs that yes, there are young people looking to agriculture as a source of actual, as an occupation and a source of actual good incomes. So it may be a bit depressing to think that yung mga anak ng magsasaka ayaw na, but actually there are young progressive people, maybe not necessarily, not even sons of farmers, who are actually getting into it. So that inspires me because I interact with these people firsthand, not only in Metro Manila but in the provinces. So nakakatuwa naman, hindi naman siguro mauubos ang ating farmers because of that.
Next question, please. By the way, it is now fashionable to be going into agriculture, okay? I know a former beauty queen who is now an actress who's actually started a farm business with coconut husks, and she's doing very well. Looks like she'll make more money there than being an actress. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Jackie Wenceslao, and I'm the Executive Vice President of PhilInsure and now Gallagher Philippines Inc., and newly inducted member of MAP. My question is, Dr. Habito, is that we want to strengthen the agriculture sector of the country. The Philippines is hit on average by 20 to 25 typhoons in a year, and our farmers suffer the consequences of that. So what, if any, are initiatives that the government are doing that would protect the farmers from financial loss in case of these disasters, which certainly, without any miss a year, hits our farmers?
Well, obviously, it's some kind of an insurance system that should be serving the needs of the farmers. And indeed, we do have already the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation for the longest time. But the perennial observation of analysts is it's so underfunded that it can only really cover a fraction of our farmers. I think government, especially Secretary Francis Chu Laurel, has also come to grips with this problem and realizes that we need to really be funding farm insurance much more carefully, because that's what will make farmers bankable and therefore have better access to bank loans. And that's the main reason why banks have been shunning them, even though they have an agri-agra law that requires them to earmark part of their loans to farmers. They don't do that because it's too risky. This will help address that. And clearly, farm insurance, the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation apparently is looking forward to much better capitalization to serve more farmers better.
We in the insurance industry certainly look forward to that.
Sana po, pagdasal natin.
It's an inquiry that's always there, and we never seem to find an answer for now.
Let's all pray that this happens finally.
Good afternoon. My name is Cliff, and I used to be the former chair of the Next Gen Committee, and I still remain Next Gen at heart. Thank you, Dr. Shell, for teaching us about our deadly sins. If you had the power given to you in this country, if the most powerful man in this country would ask you, you who have been with NEDA in 1992 and have the perspective of 20 plus years, what are we doing wrong as a country? I know it's a difficult question, but what are we doing wrong? Why can't we get out of the rut?
One word, politics. We just have very destructive politics. And I think what we need to really work for together is to have much greater political maturity as a nation. And, we all lament how voters have been voting the wrong candidates, etc. Again, I go back to the same problem of stunting, which was 45% in the 1980s. These are the voters now. the more mature voters, in fact. And of course, we blame them for making the wrong choices. But why? Because they're so poor, because they have not been capable of earning more as a result of the incapacitation that happened since they were 5 years old. So again, that's why it's a very basic thing that MAP decided to really address head on. it is, in fact, the root of a lot of problems right now. So even when I say politics is the problem, even that traces, in the end, back to this nutrition problem. So I think it's something that everybody has to take to heart and work together on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Salamat. And I apologize. I really have to run.
So
I just got a text that an approval decision has to be made in the board that I have to zoom in. So I'll have to step out to be
If
able
it's
to do
one
that.
of the banks that you're a board member of, please approve my loan. No, I don't have a loan.
No,
Thank you very
it's not
much,
a bank.
Dr. Habito. Now, don't go away, because this is even going to be another round of interesting discussions. We got a lot of micro perspective with Shell's presentation. Dan here has brought us to another milieu of thoughts, particularly the geopolitics, the international discussion. Let me tell you, one of his messages, the world has become very complex. I was so happy when I retired from corporate life. I said, then I don't have to worry about the economy or the world anymore. Unfortunately for me, I got elected into the Institute for Regional Security. And let me now tell you, what Dan has brought to reality is that there's so many more things that we managers need to be careful about. People did not care about the Straits of Hormuz. 2 months ago, in the IFRS, we were so nervous about the potential of Israel attacking Iran, because if that happened, that would have closed the Straits of Hormuz for several months, although the Israelis said they'll finish the war in 15 days, no? But you know, we're so reliant on fuel from there and so many other things. Why am I telling you that? Because this is what managing today is in the modern world. We cannot just simply be looking at a square space. We need to be focused on our businesses. We need to be focused on our industries, yet we need to be aware about several things. I want to pick up while waiting for someone to stand up and ask Dan a question. You had a very interesting point about the US dollar. I don't know if you picked it up, but a lot of exporters in the Philippines need to worry about that, because that drop in 25%, imagine a 25% drop in exchange rate translates to X% drop in the revenue of a typical exporter. What do? You need to look at other alternatives. Actually, Dan had a very good point in one of his charts. Start looking at the rest of Asia. Why? Because their currencies will hold, and the more we export to them, so much the better. I was, in my younger days, Cebu was known as the power export. Why? We had the Mactan Export Processing Zone. We had furniture exports. I remember that. We were so proud of it. And we were pumping exports like crazy. Today, it's kind of a different story. But it should be a reason for concern. So it's a very good opportunity for the chief economist of SM. You know, SM is very big. So if you want to know whether the prices in SM is going to go up or down, he's just made a call, okay? Anything that's coming from the US is going to get cheaper. No, I'm just kidding. But please, any questions here? A bit more micro, but global in perspective. Any issues that you would like to take up on Dan's presentation? There are several interesting points there about alternatives. And what to me was most important is how you look at it. Sometimes an occurrence looks bad, but if you're quick enough, fast enough, and knowledgeable enough, you can turn it around, okay? Do you know what the theme of SM is? Ano yung marketing team niyo? Yung sa SM, ano yun? SM investment? Ha? Ano yun, Melanie? Yeah, you've got it all. They all understand it. So, but that's the point. Any questions there that will help you in your businesses in Foresight? Yes, over there.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rosas and Secretary Rene. Thank you for encouraging exporter to ask question. And at this moment, I will put the question to Dr. Rosas because we were in a delegation to the US in late April. to rally for the Americans to look at the Philippines again because of a lesser tariff compared to our neighbors. But what shocked me in that meeting was the presence of an economist that told us that, you should go to Shumart. They have 65 malls. They can buy more from the exporter for local consumption. Give me your thought on that. Is it a market substitution? Can it change the drop in export and absorb by the domestic consumption?
First of all, no, sir, hindi ako doctor, so ang magalit sa akin ba advisory ko na. So, but anyway, yeah, well, you're right about market substitution. No? So it has always been an important consideration that consumers will have the opportunity to choose among substitutable goods. So when we say substitutable goods, if, for example, one brand of toothpaste is much expensive because of production cost, you have the option to choose another of those. No? So without giving away too much of our strategy, that has always been a part of our strategy as well. Not for us, but also for the other retail, and I would say even the real estate, even the pharmaceuticals have that as well, no, as a strategy. No. So I think it's more of getting the opportunity to be able to, hindi naman hoard. You can't say it's hoarding. It's actually planning ahead. No? Resource management. That's what you call it. No? And in relation to what I presented earlier, it's harder for us because we have to be able to plan for the year. No? So if the dollar peso is actually at this level, we have to be able to hedge and manage our costs at that particular level. Now, imagine a scenario where it could go both ways. So depreciation or appreciation, that will mess up your inventory levels. That will mess up your buying power as well. No? But you have to be able to shoulder the cost at the beginning. No? Now, in relation to your question, that might be true, but we're not a manufacturing company. No? We're a service company at heart. No? So we are also buffeted by what's happening with the supply chain. No? And it's a thing that we watch very closely. Did I answer your question?
I'll add to that since I no longer work for Ayala nor SM. If you can produce it cheaper than China, you have a market in Manila.
Right.
I'm sorry, let's be very practical. If you are an importer or you're an exporter, you want to go domestic, the reality is price parity. It's the challenge. And earlier, Dr. Javito and Dan highlighted the fact that one of the side effects of the global trade war between US and China is going to be product dumping. So we need to be ready for that. And I worry about my friends who are manufacturing right now. Because if China decides to dump products at below cost, you're going to have a problem selling your item. But we're not here to be depressed. So the idea is, let's find something that you can probably manufacture, resource, shift to agriculture, shift to other things, which is unique to us, which is something that we can sell to the rest, not just to the US, and earn better on the exchange rate, right? Let me go to imports, because there are importers in the room. My good friend Don D. Joseph is here. He's smiling because the global price of wine has just dropped by about 35%, okay? The price of wine has dropped by 35%, so you can now drink and get drunk cheaper. But the reality is, if Dondi bought that wine last year and he's going to try to sell it now, he's going to be losing money. That's why we need to talk about supply chains and trade functions, which I think is one of the takeaways from both Dr. Habito and Dan's presentation. It's not about stopping imports or stopping exports. It's about making sure you have a dashboard, you're looking at the right things. you know when to and when not to, and look at trends, and the developments will be there. You know, Cebuanos are great traders, I'm sorry. We don't have too much agriculture, so we invented shipping, we did trading, and I think it's inherent in Cebuano blood to be a trader, di ba? We buy tomatoes from Cagayan de Oro, eggs from Leyte and all that because we don't grow it. Trading is going to be even more exciting. There will be opportunities, there are challenges, but if you, the discussion that Dan had on us being in the middle of a US dollar or a renminbi, I'm sorry, I'm going to call it out, BRICS, is also a trading problem. Because right now, you open your LC, you book a US dollar letter of credit. You realize you can actually, someday, if it happens, open a letter of credit in renminbi. Now we say, let's ignore it. No. As I said, I'm involved in a non-profit, no sueldo role with a regional think tank based in Canberra, and we worry about things like that. And we were asked, why isn't Indonesia with you? The question is, 10 years ago, I would have been very sure that Indonesia will not join BRICS. Indonesia just joined BRICS. And Indonesia is the largest economy in Asia by virtue of population, right? They have 250, 260 million. We only have 110 million. If they're going to shift their trading perspective into BRICS, away from the US dollar, then guess what? We're all going to be affected, especially if you import or sell to Indonesia. I don't know if Dondi is importing wine from Indonesia. I don't think they have wine in Indonesia. But the reality is, this is about knowing and understanding the developments so that whatever business you're in, whatever you are managing, by the way, managing is about managing resources, human resource, raw material, production, and all that. The role of managers today has just become a bit more exciting. No need to be depressed. The key is, congratulations, you're now members of MAP, so we're going to give you a lot more information that you need. But the reality is we need to be aware of it. And I'm closing it up because I do not see anyone asking questions anymore. I want to thank, yes, the fear of BIR, Ma'am Yuni, please. By the way, she's the chairman of the tax committee of MAP.
Taga Cebu.
She's the one who slugs it out with BIR, defending a business against tax.
Unfortunately. Now, I just want to point out, Secretary, we have an Anti-Dumping Duty Act. Okay, so we are not actually hopeless when it comes to dumping. This has been used by some industries like cement. Okay, so if there's really so much dumping, we have trade protections which we could, our local industries could invoke.
Thank you very much. See, that's the reason why we have brilliant ladies like her in the MAP. By the way, she's Cebuano also, okay. No, but the point is, I didn't even know that. So now all of you in industry, if you begin to see dumping in your respective industries, then it's time to go to DTI and maybe BOI or whoever else we can trigger that to. Last and final call, any questions, comments? Okay, we will close by thanking, wait, Delisa has one more, and I'm afraid of you, so go ahead. I'm afraid of women, including my wife, so that's okay.
Thank you. Earlier, we were hearing a lot about agriculture and manufacturing. What about tourism? And, well, if the peso is appreciating against the dollar and it's harder for our manufacturers, well, other countries can't manufacture the beautiful beaches that we have. Are we putting enough investment into our tourism to bring us forward against our other neighbors to bring in more revenues for the Philippines?
I think what's lacking here is more incentives. No? Like, for example, in Thailand, the reason why a lot of people go there, a lot of the Westerners go there, is because of the incentives given to tourists. No? Now, that might be difficult on some levels to apply locally. No? We have to be cognizant of the absorptive capacity as well, no, of our tourism industry. But that could potentially be a downside in the sense of the international tourists. No. But what we're seeing in the past 3 years since the pandemic, domestic tourism has been going up. Especially in the fourth quarter, we're seeing it's counted as local tourism as well. But these are OFWs coming home for the holidays, and they spend a lot in the fourth quarter, in the sense that, they go around the country. And that's where we see most of the, I don't have the data, but if you look at hotel data, most of the reservations are actually from families of OFWs. No? So they come home, it's Christmas is different here. Baka there's this point that we might decouple from international tourist consumption, but eventually, local tourism will be driving it more and more, rather than, So that kind of offsets those losses in dollars. There will be gains from the peso as well.
I'll add to that because tourism is very, very important to Cebu. Our tourist arrivals, international tourist arrivals, has not recovered to pre-pandemic. Our neighbors have already surpassed pre-pandemic numbers. I don't mean to judge certain people in certain positions, but definitely we agree with you. Tourism is a win potential, especially for the province of Cebu, especially for Cebu City. Last year, I came home to Cebu to moderate a forum on heritage tourism and the creative industries, why they're a perfect combination and why Cebu can make a difference. My Cebuano heart still believes that yes, we can be competitive. Incentives are important, but guess what? Let's stop looking at the US because with a weaker dollar, it's more expensive for the Americans to come here. But if we can look to our neighbors, we can look to Europe. Currency play, it will still be cheaper for them to come to us, or we can have a value add for them so that they will come here regardless of currency or exchange rate. And guess what? By the way, in our neighborhood, we have one of the most expensive hotel rates. I'm sorry, hoteliers here, okay? You can get fantastic deals in Thailand at almost so cheap. Why? Because they don't care. They just want you to arrive because there will be more income than just the hotel rate. Or Vietnam, okay? The 5-star rate of Vietnam is unimaginably low compared to ours. Maybe it's a supply issue. Maybe we should build more hotels. Maybe it's currency, whether it's other resource. But definitely tourism, which is very important to Cebu, and I would encourage the Cebu business community, make noise, demand that there be something done about tourism because Cebu's economy is heavily into tourism. With that, since there's no more question, and there's one more, and he's the president, so I have to acknowledge him. So, not only that, he's a good friend. Okay, Jay.
Yeah, let's talk about resource-based industries like mining, and we recently have problems here in Cebu about our cement plants, for example. How bullish is SM in terms of mining and the intersection between the regulatory framework of the country vis-a-vis the mining industry?
Well, we're kind of bullish on mining because all of the resource there, those are inputs to our, not only here, to our production, but also Taiwan, China. You have most of the components made from our minerals. So the thing is that it's still a regulatory risk. Mining will always be a regulatory risk because of there's inherent negative play from the other players, rightly or wrongly. But we're kind of bullish on it. So we think there's potential there. It's just not being realized at the moment because of also supply chain problems and also the support industries that have to be in place in order to ensure that it's not destructive to the environment, which is one important tenet that we uphold. It's not also going to be disruptive to the lives of not only the farmers but also all the other stakeholders in the area.
And the
Problema
good news is, yesterday's LIDAC, both Senate and Congress came to an agreement with the President's intervention on passing the new mining law, which the controversial part was the export ban and all that. We kind of have a solution for that. But let me explain for those of you who are very young. Once upon a time, mining was a very big GDP contributor to Cebu. When there's a town called Toledo, where Atlas Mining, which was the largest operator in its time, and we still have the largest deposit there, by the way. So mining to me is important. I'm very green, I'm very environment, but guess what? If we can grow our mining industry, we can decentralize the economy, meaning people outside Metro Manila, outside the 4 regions that Dr. Habito showed us, Mindanao will boom, remote islands will boom because they will create an ecosystem. Every mine you open hires a few hundred people, but will benefit tens and thousands of people because of the economic activity that it will make in that area. So again, I'm looking forward to Senate and Congress passing it. It's at the BICAM. We have 6 legislative days left before the next Congress convenes. There will be an attempt to pass it, but I think these are very strong signals. The other thing is, last year, we signed a critical minerals agreement, tripartite, US, Japan, and us. And to me, that's very important because if we can make that happen, which actually requires processing in the country, the Japanese are willing to come build a facility to process the critical minerals. The problem is they need to make sure they have the supply. So we need to open mines to create the supply so that the processing plants can happen, and the employment/economic impact of such a thing is going to be super. It's going to be good. So Dr. Shell said we have a tendency to shoot ourselves in the foot. We have a good understanding of what can push our economy further. We need to get our act together to make it happen. With that, I hope you're not depressed. I hope, if at all, we've stimulated your thoughts, and look forward to you joining more MAP meetings so that you can walk home smiling and happy that we are all still alive. Thank you very much. Dan, thank you very much. And thank you to the Cebu business community and the managers of the Cebu economy. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll agree with me. Thank you, Rene, Dan, and Doc Shell. I also would like to give an opportunity to thank Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry with its President, Jay Uvalios, and Executive Director, Joyce Guzmar, for helping us organize this general membership meeting here in Cebu. Thank you. The open bar right outside is waiting for all of us, so I unilaterally declare this GMM adjourned. Thank you very much. By the way, just a reminder, I would like to invite you to the Iloilo City August 29 General Membership Meeting. So that's our GMM here in Visayas. Save the date, August 29 in Iloilo. See you there.